motivated. And there's a certain type of person that I've met who are also wonderful people who just definitely are outcome oriented. That's really what gets them up in the morning. They're willing to grind through a lot of stuff and be okay with it being very uncomfortable where they get the results. And so I would say what's important is to know yourself.
Right.
What can happen for leaders in organizations is we think that everybody is motivated by the same things that we are. So if your only focus is end of month results or end of quarter results, and everybody is pushing really hard and you pay no attention to what it's actually like for people doing the work, that for people who are not similarly results oriented, and hopefully you built in some mechanism for rewarding the results as well, then that's when you start to get into trouble. Dan Pink, in his great book Drive, talked about how really what underlies most of the motivation for people at work is autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Right
That we tend to think it's all about results and saying it's worth it, keep grinding and never seeing your family and being stressed out of your minds because at the end of the year you're going to get a huge bonus. And for some people, like, that just is not what is important to them. But if you can build in other components of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right, helping to remind people, why it is that they're doing what they're doing and why it's important, of developing lots of opportunities to create a learning environment where people are developing their own leadership capacity, right?
Yes.
Then, and giving them enough autonomy so that you're not hanging over them, then that's part of what can really create a rewarding situation. If there's one thing I've learned in 20 plus years of doing a lot of career coaching, is that we are not all wired the same. And so there's never, to use an absolute, there's never one method that's going to work for everybody. Part of what you need to recognize is what are your drivers, and then for whatever teams that you're interacting with or for whatever client base you're interacting with, what is important to them. And then that's how you need to really adjust what it is that you're doing.
And the same with parenting and every other role and relationship. There's not one way of doing everything for every child or
isn't that the truth?
Everyone around you. So, well, jumping back to a point you were talking about people grinding through the process and just the stress that many people have in the workplace. I mean, you've been in nearly every role a person can be in when it comes to employment. You've hired, fired, you've consoled people who've been fired, you've consulted. Help me understand how people need to listen and be more attuned to their bodies in order to understand stress, and even more importantly, some critical habits or processes people can put into place to minimize that impact or awareness of what it's doing in their lives.
Yeah, it definitely has been a benefit, I think, of having a lot of early years of my experience being in the physical realm, being a martial arts teacher, and then, I was always interested kind of as an active participant. And then the particular method of coaching that I learned from Martha Beck, who some people might know from her books, Finding Your Own North Star, people who read Oprah's O Magazine, she writes a monthly column there. And Martha has a very strong perspective, which I tend to really agree with, that our bodies don't lie, that our bodies are physical bodies, and really getting in touch with what your body is physically feeling like is a great indicator about how you're actually feeling. So there's a lot of really cool tools that she uses in her coaching methodology, which I've, adapted over the years and paid attention to. One of them is called the body compass, where you think about a time where you were really in a terrible situation. Just everything was not working, be it a work or a personal situation where things were just completely like out of alignment with really what you want. And you think about that, you kind of focus on it for a moment, and then you pay attention to where do you feel those feelings within your body? And for some people, it will be they feel a tightness in their shoulders or, across their brow, or I get kind of a clench in my gut. So you can name that, you can describe that feeling, and you can name it. And then you do a similar thing for a really positive experience where you really were on fire, everything was working, you love what you were doing, you got great feedback, and you tune in again and really pay attention to what are the physical feelings. and where in your body are you feeling them, and then how can you describe that moment. For some people, if they've been totally living in their heads and they're completely out of touch with how they feel, this is a process that takes a while, right? It kind of takes some time in order to address it. But what's very powerful about that is then you can be in a situation down the road where you might have a weird feeling like somebody's wanting to approach me for a partnership, and like everything on paper seems totally great, but I just get this kind of weird feeling. And then you can ask yourself, where do you feel it? And if all of a sudden, you start to feel it in the places where it's a bad situation, that could tell you something. Or similarly, something may not really make sense to you. Like, why am I so dang excited about John Legend? Like, what is it about this dude, like besides his music, that just totally gets me excited about the mission he has and how he shows up in the world? Speaking for myself, right, as somebody who loves John Legend. And, I don't really have to, there's no like logical reason why I would spend so much effort and energy, like trying to make a connection, but it's because it's fun. And because every time that I think about it, I get this really positive feeling in my body, right? There's something about that that's really good. So there's lots of research that's been done about the mind body connection, about the importance of us, getting in touch with our feelings is often how we recognize it. People who do body work and can make shifts and adjustments in people's bodies is often where, there'll be a big release of emotion. So, the science behind it is really strong, but on a very pragmatic perspective, I find it's something that can help check you and keep you honest for how it is that you're understanding what you want.
Absolutely.
Or don't want.
Absolutely. That's a good exercise. What are our fears, if there are any, that are still holding you back from creating the impact that you're capable of still making? Anything there?
What I find is it's less a fear, and it's more just some habits and barriers that I'm just getting annoyed enough with to finally do something about. One of my longtime clients, Mark Otto, who's just really wonderful, wise person, and he's working on a book, and really, really smart guy, has worked in just about every work environment you can imagine, leading companies to, up to $1 billion and done startup stuff. And he has a really, really great premise that he's working on for his book, which is just, we all walk around with a whole bunch of potential, right? And we think, oh man, if I just would learn one more method, or if I can get one more, smart person to tell me what to do, then I'm going to just work through everything. And usually what it is there are some very specific barriers that consistently get in our way that have to do with the clarity that we have and the focus that we have, and then the actions that we take, right? I want to be writing my next book really quickly. So if I really break it down and start to analyze it, I probably should spend a little bit less time on Facebook, right? A little bit less time on the phone with my best friend, and a little bit of more time writing notes about the book and focusing on that, right? So I notice patterns and habits that can distract me from creating the kinds of things I want to create in the timeline that I want to create it in. So that's more my commitment to myself, is to be, I am not motivated whatsoever by guilt, by shame. Like, that just does not work for me. I will, like, who cares?
Good on you.
So I don't care what I should have done. And again, some people that's a good positive trigger that moves them into action. What works for me is finding the reason and the purpose for why I want to do what I want to do. I want to make an impact. I want more people to be successful. I want overall economic well-being for all, right? That can get me super motivated. And the more that I stand up and do my work, that can be motivating the people who I've been working with, right, who are watching what I'm doing. So it also helps them to take action and move in that area. And then it's a matter of focus. I'm an extremist. I'm going to do it to the hilt, or I'm not going to do it at all. So, there's certain patterns where I'm like, seriously, like, again, you're going to be 50 this year and you're still like dealing with this pattern. Maybe it's time to address it. And that's usually when I then, deal with something. So that's kind of what my process is. I generally get super excited about the creative process. I love to create. I love to help people. I love to spread the message. I'm not like afraid of selling or a lot of these other things. It's generally bad habits that I get into of just comfort.
Yeah.
with not stepping into that zone that you and I talked about that I know very well. I've stepped in the mastery zone of writing 2 books. I've stepped in the martial arts zone all the way to get my black belt. Like, I know what that's like. And ironically, once I'm in it, I actually really enjoy that zone. But it getting into it sometimes can take a little bit of work.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not even a great example of it, but what comes to mind is yesterday we had an interview for a film shoot for a documentary that we're working on, and the interview fell through at the last minute. Person wasn't available, and I had a list of other projects that I wanted to get to over the next couple of weeks, and one of them was to tear out our bookcases, clean the books, sort through things, just clean out and reorganize and do some of that. And I thought, we've got an open slot today. Let's do it. And we started the process, and Lynn and I looked at each other as we were just starting it, and both of us at the same time thought, no, this is going to be hard. This is going to be hard to have to throw away books. I love books. Part of my self-image is holding on to knowledge or having these things. No, we need to do it. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
And once we were in it, we were like 2 giddy kids. It's like, yeah, we're cleaning out stuff. This is good. But getting into that process of doing something that is going to be emotionally hard. It wasn't physically hard, but emotionally hard work to do something. It's just so difficult to get started, at least for me to get started. But once started, it's a delight to do. And I find that whether I'm editing a project or I've got to get ready for a podcast or whatever it is, just getting started is like, oh, I don't think I can do it this time. And at least for me, it's that way.
It's the way it is for many people. Is that Martha Beck actually gave me great advice when I was writing my first book, Escape from Cubicle Nation. And I was, so many things were happening. I had a brand new baby, my husband's business. It was during 2008. The economy totally crashed. My husband's construction business was massively impacted by it. So I was trying to, work and provide income for the family, and had a tiny baby and write a book. And it was just, write a book about the wisdom of quitting your job to start a business, right? Which of course made me feel great in the situation. But I just got totally paralyzed and just felt like there's just no way I can write. And Martha said, just give yourself a goal of 15 minutes, like just sit down and just write for 15 minutes. And at that point, like I needed to be writing like 8 hours a day in order to meet my deadline. So it just seemed like crazy advice. But it was so powerful to just break down into little tiny micro steps where, like you found with the bookcase, just start, take the books off of one particular shelf and like lay them out. And then once you do that one, then go to the next one. And
that's all.
And that's kind of a secret of getting yourself, prepped for a habit where it just makes it as easy as possible to be doing the things that you want to do. One of the things that Mark Otto, who I mentioned before, is always saying, is what you're doing today is the absolute predictor of your future success.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
So we always think that, oh, okay, next year I'm going to do that. And as soon as I finish this, then I'm going to do that. No, it's like the action that if there's any way from a little micro perspective that you can do one piece today of what your future goal is,
yes,
that's where you're going to start to see the progress.
Yeah. The 15-minute, I call it the 15-minute rule, but I get more done because of that. I now use my phone and just set the timer for 15 minutes. And for that 15 minutes, I tell myself I can't get up and go to the bathroom. I can't look at social media. I can't do anything except this one thing. And it seems like it's been, 90 seconds or something. And the timer goes off. I go, wow, okay, I can do that again. And I'll find that I'll just keep hitting reset, and I'll work an hour and a half, 15 minutes at a time. But if I told myself I was going to work for 90 minutes on this project, I'd go, well, I can't do that. Whatever. So it absolutely works. That's been life altering to me, it seems like, or at least project altering through the years. I've got a question straight out of your book, so I'm going to feed your words straight back to you. Imagine yourself many years in the future, on the last day of your life, looking back at the things that you created, developed, nurtured, and contributed. What, ideally, would you like to see?
What I would like to see is a beautiful map of lights of people, who are clearly standing in their leadership power, people who are doing positive